For more than 4 decades, all Roker has risen before dawn, long before most of America's lights flicker on, carrying with him the quiet discipline of a man who understands that consistency is its own kind of courage. Yet in recent years, after health scares that reminded viewers of their own mortality and seasons of recovery that demanded patience he once reserved only for forecasting storms, he found himself reflecting not just on the physical toll of broadcasting, but on a subtler strain he began to recognize in the younger producers and tech specialists orbiting the bright studio of today, many of whom came from the relentless corridors of Silicon Valley, where innovation never sleeps and silence often hides exhaustion. And it was during long evenings at home with his wife, Deborah Roberts, that conversations drifted toward this modern paradox: how a culture obsessed with constant disruption leaves so little room for stillness. Deborah, seasoned by her own years reporting for ABC News, spoke of interviews with young founders who confessed, off-camera, to feeling hollow despite success. And Al listened with the steady empathy that has defined his public life, recognizing in their stories a different kind of storm system, one not charted by satellites, but by expectations, venture capital timelines, and the unspoken belief that worth is measured in productivity. He thought about his own generation, now in their 60s, who built careers brick by brick rather than app by app, who understood burnout, but also knew the sustaining rhythm of routine: church on Sundays, Little League games on weekends, and the gradual accumulation of trust. And he wondered whether something essential had been lost in the rush to optimize every second. One autumn afternoon, after taping a segment about artificial intelligence transforming morning media workflows, Al lingered in the studio, watching 20-something engineers recalibrate algorithms in real time, their fingers flying across keyboards as if stillness itself were failure. And he felt a pang, not of judgment, but of concern, remembering his own hospitalization and the forced quiet that followed, the humbling realization that the body demands mercy even when ambition does not. Deborah later told him about a source in California who had sold his startup for millions, yet admitted he hadn't taken a full breath in years, his sleep fractured by notifications, his sense of self tethered to quarterly growth. And together they recognized how eerily similar that confession sounded to veterans at high-pressure news cycles who never fully unplugged after covering tragedy. For their peers, men and women now entering retirement, watching grandchildren learn coding before cursive, the story carried a particular resonance because they had witnessed multiple waves of change, from rotary phones to smartphones, from evening broadcasts to streaming feeds, and they understood that progress without pause can erode the spirit. Al began speaking more openly, not in a preachy tone, but in the gentle cadence viewers trust, about the importance of recovery, about learning to sit with silence rather than fear it, recalling how during his own convalescence, Deborah would read beside him, the house quiet except for the ticking of a clock, a sound that once might have felt oppressive, but now seemed grounding, proof that time could move forward without constant input. He thought about Silicon Valley's open offices, so bright, so buzzing, and contrasted them with the steady hum of the NBC studio, where even amid breaking news there is a rhythm, a choreography built over decades. And he realized that innovation need not come at the expense of humanity, that wisdom often lies in knowing when to turn the camera off. During a special segment reflecting on mental health in high-performance industries, Al shared a personal anecdote about waking up one morning years ago, realizing he had delivered the forecast flawlessly while feeling emotionally adrift, a moment that taught him professionalism and well-being are not synonymous. And letters poured in from viewers in their early 60s who wrote about sons and daughters in tech who rarely visited, too tethered to launches and updates. And Al read those letters at the kitchen table with Deborah, feeling the quiet ache of a generation caught between pride in their children's achievements and worry about their children's pace. He began advocating for intentional rest, not as indulgence, but as stewardship, reminding audiences that even the most sophisticated systems require downtime, that servers overheat, and so do hearts. And in private moments, he admitted that facing his own vulnerability had deepened his compassion for those sprinting through careers without stopping to ask what the race was for. Deborah observed that the most moving interviews she conducted were not with triumphant CEOs, but with those brave enough to admit fatigue, and she and Al resolved to model something different: evenings without screens, conversations unhurried, gratitude spoken aloud, small rituals that anchored them amid a culture of acceleration. As Silicon Valley continued to chase the next breakthrough, Al's message, subtle yet persistent, became a countercurrent, a reminder that innovation should serve life, not consume it. And for viewers who had weathered recessions, wars, and personal losses, his reflections felt less like criticism of youth and more like an offering of perspective, a reassurance that it is possible to adapt without surrendering one's center. In the end, the silence he worried about was not the absence of noise, but the absence of reflection. And by speaking into that quiet with humility born of experience, Al Roker, alongside Deborah Roberts, helped illuminate a path where ambition and well-being could coexist, where success was measured not only by growth curves, but by the steadiness of one's spirit, and where the most revolutionary act in a culture of constant motion might simply be the courage to pause.